Hi, I'm James, and what we're going to look at today is building a few bits of scatter terrain for our jungle setting. Now, all I've done is I've bought some very cheap aquarium plants. To be honest, in many ways, the cheaper the better. I've got these, and I've got another pack which I bought as well. Now, there is a slight difference between them. These, that looks a bit big, doesn't it? A bit floppy. But here's the interesting bit. They actually pull apart very simply. We'll split them up a bit. Some of them are still a bit big. So get rid of that there. Now you don't just want one type, so let's add another type in as well. So we'll add that in and that one. Now these, similar idea where they've been stuck in, but unfortunately they've been glued in. So with these I'm just going to take the knife, cut it as best I can. In fact, that's come off nicely. So we've got that one. Sometimes they pull off, I found. Is this one going to pull off? Yes. And then that just leaves this bit. Sometimes you end up with them separating. That's not an issue in itself. A little bit. I tend to keep the little bits, and they're quite good for putting on bases. So we've got our bits. So what I've done is I've cut some corner pieces, some edge pieces, some ordinary pieces, and what we're going to do is we're just going to use my glue gun and put them on. So we're going to have a quick look what I've got. I've got some small ones. I tend to put those more on the edges. Now I do find that having all these the same height is a bit of an issue. So what I tend to do is just get a few of them and cut them to vary the height. Nice thing is because they're plastic, they are nice and easy to bend, so you can bend them and get the different heights by cutting them without messing up all the different leaves on it. So that about there. There we go. That should do me, I think. So let's put some of these on. Now because it's a corner piece, I'm not as worried with this. This can basically just have a little bit on it. You don't need to sort of really look into can you see completely through it and all of this, simply because it's going to be at the corner. A little bit more fiddly where you've cut these down a bit because they're not quite as good. If you look at the base on that one, you'll see it's a bit wider. That's the connector. I tend to make this quite dense terrain. You can see by using different ones, particularly different heights, it does give the impression of different plants. Let's put a couple of tall ones at the back, and then that's really giving the impression that it's getting thicker as it goes. And there's that base. So possibly could do with something on that side there, I think. dense enough. So I'll put that to one side. We'll do another one, and then we'll go and look at what the next stage is. So I haven't used that one yet. I'll use that one I think this time. What have I got? I'll use another. Well, this is quite a nice one, if I'm honest. So I was wondering where he put the knife. Talking about can't see the wood for the trees. Quite like the thought of that one towards the centre actually, so let's put that in the centre. Glue, I think there. Let's hold that in place a second. All I'm basing them on is chipboard. It's going to do what I need it to do. Let's build that up a bit because I think that's struggling to hold it. Glue stick ready. Great until I did that. I'll tell you what, I'll do this one. Rather than using them, got that, I really want to emphasise that, so let's just put this low stuff around it. Yeah, that one's come apart, so I can break it down a little. No reason I can't. This one's probably not going to block line of sight, but it is going to give me a bit of varied terrain. One. Didn't cut that one quite as well, but it's still done the job. Again, having them slightly different is not a problem because it just means you don't get that everything looking the same. So this one's going to be more difficult terrain rather than blocking terrain. The strands of glue, that's always the problem with the glue gun. There we go, I think that looks fine for what I want. So I'm going to build up a couple more off camera and then we'll come back. So we've got the pieces to this state. Now that looks a bit bright to me, I don't know about you, it looks plastic, it looks artificial. So what I've done, I've got some of this Colour Force ossified earth and all I've done is give them a quick spray over with it, just to take the edge off it. I know people have used things like matte varnish, things like that, and got good results. I quite like that sort of slight brown edge to it. So what I'm going to do now is go on to the next stage using these ones like best boot pleater tradition. Here's one I did earlier, and base it fully up. So I'm using my usual mix of PVA, brown acrylic paint, just the cheap craft store stuff, and a little bit of water. Now the reason I do this after I've done the last stage, which I know is a pain in the neck then trying to get around all the foliage, but this hides all of the glue from when we've been putting the plants on. So you could do it first. I did experiment where I actually did the base brown first, then came back and did this, and to be honest, the time it added for very little difference. I just thought may as well just keep doing this. No point in wasting time. This is something I want to get used to get on the table. I'm not a big believer in doing absolutely fantastic builds if it means it takes time and I don't get to game as much. So just be careful as you're doing this. You don't want it too watery, because the board will warp if it gets too wet, I've found. It's a bit fiddly to get into some of these, but hey, it could be worse. If you do find you miss bits, you can always go back and do them afterwards. So I'm happy with how that is there. So now what we're going to do is use some of the mixed herbs, just to give it exactly the same sort of base as the baseboard. How on earth did that get under there? I just love the effect of this, because it really does look like leaves and plants, and I was paying so much more for a very similar effect using modelling material, whereas the plant, the mixed herbs are so cheap, it's unreal. There we go, that's that one done. You can see there is a little bit of warping in there, so what I tend to do is just bend it back a little, preferably while it's still wet. There we go, that'll do. So let's do the other one. In fact, before I do it, let's just demonstrate with these. These were quite good. We saw how fiddly these were to take out. So I actually discovered that just for some of them, while I'm using some to break up and add to the main foliage, there's no reason I can't just actually paint up that base so it becomes a little mound. And we're going to end up with a very simple piece of scatter terrain. I didn't even bother with these doing the spraying with the ossified brown. I thought the colour on these was really not really good. You can see there, that does the job quite nicely. So let's do this big one. This one I left a bit more space, so I can use the bigger brush on this one. That makes my life a bit easier. Got some on a leaf there, but that's not going to matter because it's right on the ground, and it's going to end up with some of the foliage on top of it, so it just looks like it's sunk into the ground a little, onto ground level. And we've got a little mound there around where the glue is. I can just build up a little bit of the mix around that. I mean, for quick 5-minute builds, these are more than adequate. What I haven't done yet is done any height variation in these. I am going to do some little mounds and things with some vegetation on later, but that's just the same way you normally build up a mound on your board. I mean, I use cardboard, bizarrely, and if you want to see how I do that, there is a video on the channel. I'll put a link in the description. Go right in there. Let's try and get the edge of the base as well, because if you get the edge, it just means it just looks that bit neater. The brown blends it in a bit more. There we go. So start with what we've got on here. So you don't need a huge amount of this. I wouldn't go out and buy supermarket best one for this, but it is still got a lovely smell. I mean, depending on how much ground coverage you want, you could even leave large chunks of it brown, just to give that mud effect. And the beauty of having glued it down is it actually, if the plant's glued down, they are quite tough. I can use them to hold it while I'm doing this, and they are holding on quite comfortably. So this is going to be quite a robust bit of terrain, which is what you really want in a wargaming board. Give that a little bit of time to dry, and then what I'm going to do, just like I did on the board, is just use a little bit of PVA and water just to seal it. So look at that one, check that I'm happy with that. Yeah, that's looking good. So that's 2 more pieces, or 3 more pieces done, because I did that little one as well. We'll let them dry, and then we'll look at the next pieces, and then we'll come back with everything together on the board.